Hello and welcome back to the Exeter Tactical Rebuild, and in today's episode we're going to build an extreme tiki-taka tactic. And now to the tactics. Based on the research that we've done, Pep Guardiola's system kind of revolved between a 4-3-3 and a 3-4-3 system, and the 3-4-3 kind of was basically the defensive midfielder or halfback in the case of Sergio Busquets slotting in between the two centre halves, and then you have your wing backs flying high, and then of course the front three. His goalkeeper at the time was Victor Valdez, and Valdez was very good with the ball at his feet. He played as a sweeper keeper on defend. I'm going to say defend because I noticed that on support DT, the sweeper keeper was very capable of starting counter-attacks, and with Victor Valdez, he was more like being a kind of player that can act like a third or fourth centre-back and just recycle the possession between himself and the other central defenders. In 2009, I think they had Eric Abidal playing in the left back role, and he was more of a reserved, conservative fullback, so he didn't really get as high up the pitch as modern fullbacks normally do, so it was more of another avenue to somehow recycle possession. At right back, we all know who played in this role. Dani Alves had the freedom to kind of dominate the entire right flank. He would almost act like a complete wing back on attack duty or support duty, but then I realized that the complete wing back, while he's on attack, he's going to kind of suppress his defensive abilities, but with support duty, he kind of has the ability to marry his defensive ability with a lot of attacking intent. So a complete wing back on support duty or a wing back on attack were my options for this role. The halfback, like we also mentioned, was more like Sergio Busquets' role. He kind of operated in this position where he kind of get in between the centre halves. The two centre halves are very good on possession as well. They played ideally as ball playing defenders because they could start moves from deeper areas. They could kind of play a defense splitting pass from deeper areas, and they also were able to recycle possession among themselves and kind of keep the team going. And they played very high up the pitch as well, as we'll get to the defensive line much later. In centre of midfield, we had Xavi and Iniesta, and both of them had different responsibilities for the team. We're going to start with Xavi, for example. Xavi used to play on the right-hand side, and then he's going to opt like a deep line playmaker for the team. He kind of received the ball from the other players and kept the team in possession even when they were in attack. So he's going to be in a slightly deeper role at the edge of the box and kind of recycled possession from the wings and moved it to the left-hand side or to the right-hand side. He kind of collected the ball and was orchestrating everything like a pivot. So even though Sergio Busquets was the DM, the pivot was actually Xavi in the team. Beside him was one of his close buddies in Andres Iniesta. Iniesta, when I was watching Barcelona a lot, kind of operated on the left-hand side. So you would think he was a winger, but then you realize that he kind of played in central midfield. So the mezzala is the ideal role that is kind of fits Andres Iniesta in this sense because of how wide he got most times and how well he operated in the half spaces. At the time, I didn't really know that was a half space or that was a mezzala thing. Mezzala didn't really exist that time, but you can imagine I was looking at Andres Iniesta as a player playing in that kind of space, in that kind of zone, and I didn't really know what a mezzala was until the term kind of came out. I was playing Football Manager, and then I realized that, hey, Andres Iniesta was a mezzala. One of the very best too. Now, when it gets to attack, that's where we start talking about Lionel Messi and Samuel Eto'o and Zlatan Ibrahimovic and all the other players. And they kind of worked out differently when all of them were in the front line. David Villa is also a very interesting character to bring into this system because he played as a winger on attack duty on the left-hand side. In some of those tactics anyway, based on the research, it's kind of the role that he operated because he tends to just drift out wide, and then in collaboration with Iniesta as well, they kind of just operated on this left-hand side and caused a lot of overloads for the other teams. In attack, Lionel Messi at some point started drifting into the front line, and that's where we started noticing the false nine ability of Lionel Messi, where he's going to be in attack, but then you're going to see him all the way in the half spaces, in the number 10 role. On the left-hand side, he could just go anywhere he wanted, and that's kind of what the false nine allows you to do in this system. That moved Zlatan Ibrahimovic, that was normally the centre forward or the target forward in this team, to go out and kind of just be on the bench because he couldn't do what Messi was doing. Messi, on the other hand, even though he played predominantly on the right-hand side, would recognize that role to be the inside forward or the inverted winger role. Regardless of what you give it to Lionel Messi, he's going to actually operate in that manner, just to cut inside and then get into the box or play a pass. I'm going to use the inside forward as an example here. So when Messi plays as an inside forward in this sense, you could have a conventional striker up front that could also kind of drop in around and create chances. An advanced forward is able to do that, but he's going to be too forward for the Barcelona system, and since then there isn't that much space in the opposition's defense, you can't really rely on the advanced forward in this sense. So a deep line forward on attack duty or even a pressing forward on support duty to try and enable our tiki-taka high press to work out. Could be a good role when you have somebody else in here and then you have your inverted winger on support duty on the right hand side. So moving into team instructions, then I'm going to start with the in possession instructions. And then a lot of people remember Barcelona for their slow, patient, short passing style of play that was exemplary of the tiki-taka style of play. But they weren't just keeping possession just for the sake of it. So there was an intent, or let's say an intention as to why they were holding on to the ball for that long. They were trying to create space in the opposition's defense. With the balanced mentality, you can actually replicate that, but usually a positive mentality is what you use to actually implement a tiki-taka possession-based style of play, where there's an intention of your passing and you're trying to break the opposition down. I'm going to leave it unbalanced for now, but what Barcelona tends to do is you would think that they had a lot of everybody playing shorter passing, but in that sense, there were key players in the team. Like I mentioned, the ball-playing defender, Javi himself, and even the halfback. Most of these players had the ability to actually unlock the defense and play a direct pass. So that could be an internal player instruction that you go on to include. So let's say you have a deep line playmaker. You notice that even though you have shorter passing in team instructions, you can actually ask your deep line playmaker to play more direct passing. So when the ball gets to him and he sees a space, he can actually go on to find it. Since we're using Exeter City in this case, the player by himself may not have the intellect to know that he's supposed to play a direct pass when he sees one. But if you ask him in the more direct passing instruction included in his psyche, he could remember that that is an instruction and he can go ahead to take on that responsibility. That's just the way I'm thinking about it because I'm preparing for the Aston Villa game. Now, there was a huge debate in my mind whether it was an expressive style of play or a very disciplined style of play, because with tiki-taka and with Pep Guardiola's system at Barcelona, and even if you look at Man City, they weren't that very wasteful in what they do. So if you ask your team to be more expressive, it means you're asking your creative players to turn things out of the ordinary. And with Exeter City, I don't know if they have the technical ability to do that. Even with Barcelona at the time, they did have the technical ability, but they were very, very disciplined in the way they went about playing their football. They didn't do anything stupid out of the ordinary, so I'm not really going to turn on the expressive instruction in this sense. Dribbling less was something that we can go on to include because not a lot of players ran all around when they were playing for Barcelona. There was a careful way that you were going about dribbling. Now, when you turn on dribble less, that means that the Medalla, on the other hand, you can obviously ask a player that is playing as a Medalla, which is the Iniesta role, to go ahead and dribble a lot more. So when everybody in the team isn't dribbling, you have your Medalla that is going to dribble when he has possession of the ball. So that kind of confuses the opposition in the way that they're going to defend a bit. Going into transition now, so we don't spend too much time on the tactics. There's a lot of detail that can actually go into the tactic, but we're trying to create a starting point for this system. And then counter press is obviously very vital because when we lose possession, we have to try and win it back as early as possible. We're going to be really, really high up. Counter-attacking would not be necessary because we're not planning to play a counter-attacking style of play. It won't be necessary to actually force counter-attacks, but counter press is important. When the goalkeeper has possession of the ball, he's going to actually slow the pace down as opposed to distributing it quickly. I'm not a fan of slowing the pace down when I play Football Manager, but this is a different scenario for me, so it's a good experiment to actually try out. The keeper is going to obviously take long short kicks, not trying to lose the ball in any way. You have to wait for the defenders. I'm not really sure we really need to distribute it to fullbacks per se. It doesn't really matter, but the emphasis is to actually distribute it to either centre backs or the fullbacks. I'm going to just choose centre backs for this one. Have him take short kicks, have him play out of defense. That reminds me, we need to go into in possession and actually ask the team to play out of defense. When we're out of possession, I did mention it before, our pressing is going to be very intense because it's an extreme tiki-taka possession-based football. We're going to obviously play with a high line and a higher defensive line. I'm going to keep it at higher for the Aston Villa game, but when the league starts, I will recommend that, or I will try to go to a much higher defensive line just to compress the pitch a lot more. But I'm going to keep it on high defensive line for now. I'm not going to include any other instruction in this setting just to watch how the team actually performs with the current instructions that I have. I'll consider including the short game, prevent short goalkeeper distribution, and of course step up more or get stuck in. But that's much later in the league. That's why I'm going to leave it like this as it is. So that is the core of the 2009 or 2011 system. There's a lot, like I mentioned, there's a lot of detail that actually goes into it, and there's a lot of tweaking that you have to do. And I assume that Pep Guardiola did a lot of tweaking when he was managing Barcelona. It's why they stayed so dynamic and stayed so creative and won so many games. But the core of the system is what we've got here. And for Exeter City, I might need to have my Medalla to play on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. So I can have my deep line playmaker play on the left instead. So have my Medalla on the right and the deep line support or deep line playmaker on support playing on the left. So the inside forward is going to be on the left hand side now because I think this is what suits my team and the players that I have. So having the mid-Zala and the winger on attack duty play on the right. So my fullback is going to be on support duty playing on the right hand side, and then my left back is going to be the adventurous wing back or complete wing back on support duty. So this is the shape that we're going to go for. It's kind of like a mirror image of the original Barcelona tactic, but it's a good starting point. We'll see how the Aston Villa game goes. In all honesty, I'm scared for this Aston Villa game, and most of my players are already tired, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen. We're going to use a quick pick to try and filter out those tired players. And there aren't a lot of them, so we still have to play with our tired legs, so we might need to worry about our intensity as to how we're going to go about this Aston Villa game. Okay, boys, let's see what you've got for me. Please try not to lose heavily. Try not to lose heavily in this game. So we've survived the first 15 minutes of the game. There aren't any goals, and we're in possession of the ball now. It's out to Mendes. Mitchell! Oh, saved by Olsen. Oh my goodness. We're not playing that badly though. We've had our first shot on target after 18 minutes. So here's Trevor with the corner. Funny enough, I haven't actually done any set pieces. Headed away out to Fitzgerald. Mosque! Defended. So we've got 2 chances already. That's good. Another corner. We need to work on our set piece routines, actually see how well we do. I know that Barcelona, well, let's just see the corner first. It headed away. Aomson out to Mosque. Come on, good recycling of possession. So we see how well the team is playing with a high line. So I was talking about set pieces earlier. We do have to work on our Barcelona style set pieces where we play short passing. So here's a long ball over the top, defended by Diego Carlos. Can somebody go on to press? So we're kind of reserving our strength. I don't think my players have the legs anymore. We might consider disabling our strong press. Longley. Played out wide. Here's Young. Can somebody mark him? Oh my goodness. He did actually play a good ball there. So with the game still poised at 0-0, we could consider making changes now. Positive. Here's Cash. Blocked the cross. Ashley Young, saved by Woods. So we've survived that scare highlight right now. And we can start making changes. It's halftime already, and we can think about who we're going to bring on. To be honest, I might shift to a slightly more defensive system for the second half because we don't really have the legs anymore to go forward. I'm happy with the performance so far. That could galvanize my team a bit. Everybody is shattered. Oh my goodness. So I can bring on Jack Aitchison to play in for Mosque now. He has a lot of legs in him. And then Dion Rankin is my right back. So let's look for who's a good right back that we can bring on. Here's Pierce Sweeney. Sweeney is a centre half. So if he's playing at right back, he's going to mean he's going to have that slightly more conservative defensive role. So that's good. Jamie Scott as my inside forward on the left hand side. I have Yannick Wildschut, right-sided or right-footed player, can play on the left hand side. We can have him replace James Scott as the inside forward on that flank. Maybe switch the inside forward to an inverted winger on support. That's a good consideration. Kyle Taylor as well is an advanced playmaker. His marking isn't so great, so we can consider bringing him in for the Ryan Trevitt that is playing as a Metala on support duty. Have him play there on the right hand side. And let's see how second half actually goes. I was saying consider switching from a balanced mentality to cautious. Okay, let's just leave it unbalanced for now. So we've got our first blow of the preseason friendly, and Dylan Williams is actually injured. Let's just see that it's not a serious injury, potential thigh injury. Wow. So we're going to bring on Vincent Harper to replace him, and he's a winger normally, so hopefully he's going to be able to somehow defend. And where is he? Let's just filter this by everybody and then bring on Vincent Harper for Williams. He's playing as a complete wing back, so he should not really worry too much about his defending. And let's try and see how we can finish this game by not losing it. It's an hour gone, and we should probably sub this guy to Vidya Bete. Taking off my left-sided centre half now. We're not penetrating team. Okay, they've gone through our defense. Kellyman, he scored. Aston Villa finally have had their breakthrough, and it's due to one lapse in concentration. They lost possession of the ball and gave it to Kellyman. And Kellyman found Tillemans, and Tillemans went back to Kellyman, and that is, wow, that's a peach of a chance. Anyway, we did our best, and I wonder if he can actually play that role. He has lost possession twice now that I'm aware of. O'Reilly, and the 2 times Chile lost possession, we actually conceded a goal. That's just crazy. This is a risky approach, I have to be honest with you, but it's something worth doing. It's a challenge worth taking. So that might just about be that for how the game is going to end. We lost Aston Villa 2-0. There's no way to come back to this game now, but we've got our players. Well, to be fair, we started with players that were half fit. They weren't really. So I've tweaked our training schedule in the coming weeks to kind of allow us to have a lot more rest days. It should help us prepare for the next game against Swindon. I also included team bonding and only match tactics on the day before the actual game. And even the Wycombe Wanderers game that's coming up much later, I'm trying to just include a lot more rest days just so that our players are not going to be tired when that time comes. I also have Ayudan Cyril as my new sporting scientist, and I'm also planning for a technical director to help me sign staff because I noticed that I'm going to need good staff to actually help us on this team. The first one is the sporting scientist that we have. He could help us with injuries as well. And then of course here we are in our Vernon Verdi technical director. He's coming in. You can look at his attributes right here. He has good staffing ability and good negotiations as well. Two attributes that are important for a technical director, and they are the guys that actually go on to sign good staff for you. So it helps to kind of have them. I've also gone on to reduce my club budget. It was all the way up in 150k I think, but because we've signed two new staff members, it kind of reduced. But I'm taking it all the way down, so I'm not tempted to actually sign anybody. We're going to use the players that we have in the squad and maybe try to get some loan players in. So currently everything is looking good right now. We need to start winning a lot more games. So the Swindon game is actually important for how our season is going to go. Looking at our team dynamics, it was abysmal before and currently we are at poor. It's not getting slightly better, but we will get better towards the season as we go on to start winning games, which is why I think that the Swindon game is actually important for us. We do have to win that game at all costs. So our 2-1 scoreline against Swindon Town didn't really do us justice in the game. We did have a slow start, so they went on early in the 20th minute, but 3 minutes later we had our equalizer, and from that moment we kind of dominated the entire game. We had loads of chances, but the only downside was that we had an XG of 1.99, which is, comparing to the amount of goals that we scored, it looks quite good, but to me we could have had a lot more goals. We did play really, really well in that game. We had a possession count. Our possession was about 69% at the end of the game, and then you can see the XG from this graph. We completely dominated the game, so that was quite good. So our next game is actually a Skybet League 1 game against Wycombe Wanderers. So by now I don't know how ready my team is for the game, but it's important that we go on against Wycombe Wanderers pretending that we're actually ready for the game. Our familiarity graph is going to kick on much sooner as the season unfolds, so I do expect that we're going to get better at playing with this tactic. The idea is to actually transform this team to become a rock solid, extremely possession-based tactic operating in that tiki-taka system. So it's going to take a slow grind, and I expect that, but the journey is really the agenda here, not really carrying a team to have instant success. It's the process of turning a team from what they were before into a tiki-taka dominant side in this Skybet League 1. So that's it for part 2 today. We'll see you later in part 3, where we're going to talk about more of how the other games in the season actually gone and how my tactic has gone on to progress with my team and how we're doing. So that's going to be for part 3. I hope I'll see you there. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one.